Let down your hair.
So what is semiotics? In a nutshell, semiotics is the study of how we come to derive meaning and understanding of reality through means of communication using sign systems.
Please don't freak out.
It's not the easiest subject, and at times you might begin to wonder how it applies to stylized characters, but I implore you to stick with me at least until the end of this video, and I promise it will make a lot more sense. There are many different flavours of semiotics, each as convoluted as the next, and without any real empirical methodology. For this reason, I've decided to prepare my own flavour based on how I perceive its application to character design. The most fundamental concept of semiotics is the sign, which comprises of a signifier and a signified. A signifier is something that signifies something else. This could be a word, an image, a sound, a hand gesture, a crown, or anything else with the potential to assign meaning.
Guys, I want a castle.
When Flynn says the word castle, he's using a signifier. It might seem obvious what the word signifies, a large building with high walls, towers, and maybe a moat. Well, almost, but not quite. The word actually signifies our conceptual understanding of a castle, a subtle but important distinction. Conceptual reality is subjective. Now think about the word castle. It may have occurred to you at some point in your life that words are random. A castle could have been called anything, just like your name could have been anything. The difference being that your name as a signifier for you was probably agreed on by two parents, whereas the word castle, to signify a castle, is agreed on by society. But the fact remains that in almost all cases, words are arbitrary. 3D characters are a bit different. Characters are essentially signifiers, made up of smaller constituent signifiers. In the case of Rapunzel, the design signifies a young princess with long blonde hair. But as a signifier, this is not arbitrary, since, although stylized, it bears some resemblance to the thing that's being signified, meaning it's derivative. The design is derived from an observed notion of how a young blonde princess would look in reality. We call this a motivated sign. This leads on to the concept of denotation and connotation. Denotation is described as the most literal or common sense meaning of a sign. Take the word bed. The common sense meaning is the piece of furniture that you sleep on, and if you Google it, this is how it's described. Connotations, on the other hand, are secondary associations that follow denotation. So in the case of the word bed, these might include sleep, sickness, comfort, reading, anything you might associate with a bed. Therefore, connotations are more subjective than denotation, but this doesn't render them entirely unpredictable, since interpretation relies heavily on context. We established that the word bed denotes a piece of furniture that you sleep on, but what if I was talking about a bed of flowers, or a riverbed? Notice then how context influences not only connotation, but also denotation. Now, as well as context, interpretation falls victim to culture. A culture can be defined as a group of people that share stable and sustaining meanings. This could span a whole town, sharing a dance, or be contained within a small group of friends involved in an unanticipated sing-song. To jump back to Wreck-It Ralph for a moment, a participant of the gaming culture is bound to recognise more character references than somebody outside of it, evoking different emotional responses and offering a more nuanced experience. Contact with culture shapes the way we interpret the world. How many of these characters can you put a name to? We've covered a lot here, so just to quickly run through it again, humans communicate through the use of signs. The signs we produce are intended to communicate something to the recipient. Considering Rapunzel's design, it seems clear that a young blonde princess is being communicated by reading the signifiers in the given context, which evoke a number of additional emotional responses we call connotations. These responses are influenced by the cultures in which the viewer participates. Now, are you ready for another fascinating layer of complexity? For the most part, 3D characters emulate human beings, and this includes animals and inanimate objects too. This means that 3D characters are sign-producing communicative beings in their own right, communicating ideas not just to us, the viewers, but amongst themselves too. They are signs that interact with other signs. This is expertly played on in this movie. Take Mother Gothel. We know she's the antagonist, and this is alluded to by the subtle cues in her design. We feel those connotations. There's something about our reality, our context, our culture, that makes us suspicious of Mother Gothel. So why doesn't Rapunzel seem to notice? Is this because Rapunzel is
Gullible, naive, positively grubby, ditzy, and a bit, well, vague.
Let's look at her context. Rapunzel was kidnapped very early in life and has ever since been locked away in a tower. She has no contact with anybody from the outside world and so lacks any cultural reference beyond Mother Gothel's consent.
The outside world is a dangerous place, filled with horrible, selfish people. You must stay here.
How could she possibly know any different? It's not until much later in the movie there's a wonderful scene where Rapunzel finally gets to experience the culture of her rightful hometown. In this scene, we see a seed of suspicion planted into the mind of our protagonist. Ultimately, it's her contact with culture that unlocks the memory of her true past. This in turn gives Rapunzel's life a new context,
I am the lost princess.
which allows Rapunzel to see Mother Gothel for what she truly is.
Did I mumble, Mother? Or should I even call you that?
So what does all this have to do with designing stylized characters? When we build characters, we're communicating an idea. Note that the word idea is a synonym of the word concept. In part 1, I told you the aim when building stylized characters is appeal. Listen to what Zach Petrock, one of Disney's key artists, has to say about that.
So he's supposed to feel appealing and approachable and nurturing. So we use the word appeal to describe him based on how well he is hitting those emotions.
To translate this into semiotic terms, we use the word appeal to describe him based on how well he evokes the desired connotations.
And at one point he turns Baymax Vinyl into this superhero, so he builds all this mech armor and throws it on him. So when we were designing this character, we did the same thing. Is it appealing? But in this case, we're looking for power and intimidation and strength.
Let's see one last clip.
And they said this one is more appealing because it evoked the emotions that they were after.
Appeal can be found in the connotations initiated by a design, and to take control of them, we need to understand how characters are interpreted by our audience. We've only scratched the surface of semiotics, but we now know enough to get into what I'd call the fun part of designing characters. In fact, this is the last time I'll talk about semiotic theory, but if you'd like to know more about it, I'll link some content in the description below. In the next video, we'll start looking at the building blocks of stylized characters and how they're used to communicate different ideas. Hello boys and girls, I just wanted to remind you that if you wish to support these videos, I have a Gumroad page where you can buy the bonus content of some of my previous tutorials. I also have a Patreon page working on a donation basis at the moment, and any help is greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching.